Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The Warriors want to strengthen their front court, and one player who could be involved in a trade for Kuminga is Nikola Vucevic of the Chicago Bulls. Kuminga for Vucevic just makes too much sense. The most surprising part of the Chicago Bulls' 32-point loss to a Steph Curry and Draymond Green-less Golden State Warriors team wasn't their dismal offense or routinely porous defense. It was Jonathan Kuminga being a healthy scratch from Steve Kerr's rotation. Kuminga and Josh Giddey were two of the four prominent restricted free agents who spent the summer fighting for long-term deals. Giddey became the second domino to fall after the Brooklyn Nets' Cam Thomas, though unlike Thomas, he landed a 4-year, $100 million contract with the Bulls. Why a Jonathan Kuminga trade is all but certain. 3 weeks after Giddey signed his long-term deal, Kuminga and the Warriors finally reached an agreement of their own. While the annual value is similar to Giddey's contract, Kuminga returned to Golden State on a 2-year, $46.8 million deal that includes a team option after the first season. While the Aussie prioritized long-term stability with an organization that clearly valued him, Kuminga opted for the opposite, a shorter deal that preserves future flexibility. And nearly 2 months into the season, Giddey's commitment is paying off for the Bulls just as Kuminga's bet on flexibility is paying off for him. Giddey has ascended into all-star contention, averaging 20.3 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 8.9 assists. Kuminga, meanwhile, couldn't even get on the floor against a reeling Bulls team despite the Warriors missing Curry, Green, and even Al Horford. While it may seem like a small blip, Kuminga's latest DNP reflects a much larger pattern in Golden State. His tenure has swung from high-upside flashes to sudden benchings, and it's becoming increasingly clear that his future lies outside the Bay Area. Even though Warriors head coach Steve Kerr continues to make light of Kuminga's up-and-down tenure, a divorce appears to be looming, at least according to Golden State insider Anthony Slater. The ESPN journalist wrote, Kuminga becomes trade-eligible January 15. The Warriors are expected to explore the Kuminga trade market in the weeks ahead as the probability of a split before the February deadline remains strong. Considering Kuminga's trade value likely won't be any higher than it is now, 5 years into his career and still unable to lock down a consistent role, it's plausible the Warriors will look to wipe their hands clean of the $22.5 million they owe him this season and, finally, move on. There's always an appeal to 23-year-old former top 10 picks, but after watching the Bulls move Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey and Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro in consecutive off-seasons, there's a legitimate case that Golden State could follow a similar path, flipping Kuminga for an immediate contributor, especially with the Warriors carrying the second oldest roster in the NBA. Chicago could be Kuminga's best fit. Of the known teams interested in Kuminga, the Bulls immediately come to mind. NBA insider Jake Fisher reported last summer that the 6'7" Wings camp sought to land in Chicago, a solution that felt amicable. Meanwhile, Chicago acquired Okoro during Kuminga's standoff with the Warriors, reducing their need for another wing. Now, 6 weeks into the season, an injury-depleted Bulls squad shouldn't care less about its roster composition, while the 13-12 Warriors could use a boost to contend in the grueling Western Conference. One trade that immediately makes sense for both the Bulls and Warriors is a Nikola Vucevic for Kuminga swap. Golden State has long sought a floor-spacing big and even signed Horford this offseason to address that need. Yet Horford has struggled, shooting just 29.8% from long range. And to boot, the Warriors are 14.1 points per 100 possessions worse with him on the floor. Last season, the Warriors reportedly targeted Vucevic, but Chicago's insistence on landing a first-round pick stalled talks. This time, the Bulls should consider Kuminga, a former target and a player rather than a draft pick, which the Bulls for some reason prefer, in exchange for the 35-year-old big man. While it would cripple Chicago's already thin interior, the Bulls aren't stopping their opponents anyway, so why not? That said, the Warriors might hesitate to trade a 23-year-old for a 35-year-old on an expiring contract, but the solution is simple. Including a few second-round picks could make it work, especially since Golden State is almost entirely devoid of second-round selections for the next 8 years. Some might argue the trade isn't worth it for the Warriors, but after 5 seasons of back and forth with Kuminga, including benching him for an entire game in December against the Bulls, it's clear Golden State needs to move on, even if the return isn't substantial. Warriors can no longer ignore Quinton Post as a legitimate starter. Much of Golden State's impressive defense has stemmed from Post, whose impressive leap on that end of the floor has been one of the biggest positives through the early part of the season. The second-year center kept All-Star big man Evan Mobley to just 4 of 12 shooting when guarding him in Cleveland on Saturday, before outplaying Nikola Vucevic for not the first time, as the 2X All-Star shot only 4 of 13 and had 9 points in his team's heavy defeat. The numbers suggest that Post has been one of the best defenders in the entire league this season, including with the fact he has the 5th best defensive rating, minimum 17 minutes per game, and the 2nd best, only behind Zach Edey, if you remove 3 players from the all-conquering Oklahoma City Thunder. It's time to start the Quinton Post DPOY narrative. This is enough of a sample size where it's now impossible to ignore, and so too is the fact Golden State's defense looked so good with Green on the sidelines over the past 2 games. Post averaged 29 minutes against the Cavaliers and Bulls, suggesting he's more than ready for more opportunity compared to the 17.5 he's averaged through the first 25 games. Just as importantly, the 25-year-old's three-point shooting has taken a spike in the right direction over recent games. He's shot 10 of 21, 47.6%, from three-point range across the last 4 games, including going 5 of 10 against the Bulls for an equal season-high 19 points on Sunday. If Post is going to return to somewhere near a 40% three-point shooter, and continue being this level of defender, there is absolutely no need to start Green at center going forward. In fact, there's little reason to play him as a small ball 5 for more than a few minutes here and there if a game really calls for it. Now the Warriors just need to find some rhythm for veteran center Al Horford, with the still very real possibility of having he and Post as an effective center duo that lessens the burden on Green over the remainder of the season. The Warriors' Jonathan Kuminga saga only ends with losers. Golden State Warriors. Jonathan Kuminga was condemned to the bench with more than a month until he can be traded. Chicago in December has the kind of cold that doesn't spare a single inch. But the warmest place in the Windy City might have been the chair occupied by Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga at United Center Sunday night. A DNP coach's decision for a healthy former number 7 overall pick who just signed a contract making him the Warriors' 4th highest paid player isn't a message or nudge. It's a scream of frustration. It's Steve Kerr standing on the scorer's table with a megaphone, announcing to the league that he would rather play a rotating cast of tryhards and NBA geriatrics than watch Kuminga miss another box out, treat a defensive rotation like a strictly optional suggestion, or stop the ball dead for another 10-dribble isolation experiment. This is the final salvo. The final straw. Kerr is telling Kuminga, buy in, do the little things, and stop playing like an NBA game is nothing more than the first draft of a YouTube highlight reel. If this feels like déjà vu, that's because we are trapped in the basketball version of Groundhog Day. Kerr has already tried the carrot. He handed Kuminga a permanent starting job on a silver platter after the forward showed a modicum of buy-in to start the season. He praised the athleticism. He lauded the professionalism. He gave Kuminga all the external validation that he could handle for doing the right thing for like a week. And how did Kuminga respond? By rolling his eyes and promptly reverting to his factory settings, which is me first basketball. So now, Kerr is using the stick. Again. Benching Kuminga entirely against the Bulls wasn't just tactical, it was punitive. It was Kerr saying, simply, I cannot trust you. And trust is the currency of the realm in the Church of the Golden State Warriors. You don't have to be Stephen Curry to thrive in this system, but you do have to genuflect at the altar of ball movement and defensive connectivity. Kuminga, however, has made it undeniably clear that he believes he should be the subject of the stained glass windows. To his credit, Kuminga said all the right things after the DNP. He was professional. He talked about staying ready. Don't buy it. Kuminga is smart. He has a lot of practice in saying the right thing to ensure he doesn't get labeled toxic before he can secure his next bag. He leaves the outlandish comments to his agent and a steady collection of non-ball-knower fanboys on social media. The real story lies behind the scenes, where Kuminga becomes aloof and passive when confronted, agreeing to everything to end the conversation so he can go back to doing exactly what he wants when he gets his next chance. Headstrong? That's just the start. What has changed? How has Kuminga appreciably, consistently shown any growth from his age 20 season? It's the Mamba mentality gone wrong. Because, despite Kuminga's belief, he is not the next Kobe Bryant. For a while now, it's been clear that the Warriors brass would have to choose between Kuminga and Kerr. They've tried to have it both ways. Someone has to go, and forgive me for siding with the coach. Now, Kuminga knows that publicly torching a four-time champion coach is bad business, so he smiles and nods and pretends he cares about what's being laid down. It's performance art, so it never reflects in his performance on the court. And here is the cruel irony of the situation, the part that makes this entire saga so frustratingly stupid: this stalemate is mutually assured destruction. Kuminga wants to be the guy. He wants out of Golden State so he can spread his wings and fly, and shoot 25 times a game. But by refusing to adapt his game to a team paying him more than $20 million a year, he is actively lighting his own trade value on fire. There might still be some marks out there, but general managers around this league aren't blind. They see the DNP. They see the lack of on-court awareness. They see a guy who thinks being a role player is beneath him, despite having never proven he can impact winning in any serious capacity. Which NBA team is out there watching this and thinking, that's what we need? Even the Kings have to wonder if the juice is worth the squeeze. And does Kuminga not know he's dealing with an organization whose leader considers it a personal affront to lose any deal? The Warriors had offers for Kuminga in a sign-and-trade this summer. Decent offers. Offers they would kill to have on the table right now. But they didn't take them. They bet on the talent. They wanted to maximize. And because the Warriors passed then, we now find ourselves in an all-too-predictable addition-by-subtraction scenario. Will the Warriors be willing to admit defeat? There's no guarantee there. Because, best-case scenario, they're hoping there's some 5-team super trade they can sneak Kuminga into. Otherwise, they're taking on another team's bad money just to wash their hands of this situation. That's going to be some harsh medicine to take, but that's what you get for not taking care of a problem when it first arrives, for thinking you can fix it yourself. Kuminga's highest value, to the Warriors, to the trade market and to his own bank account, was during that brief, flickering moment when he bought in to start the year, months before he was eligible to be traded. That's when he cut hard, defended with purpose, and crashed the glass. That player is an asset. That player brings back a decent haul. Does Kuminga think those 5 games carry enough weight to carry him out of town? If so, he's made a critical miscalculation. Because the player sitting on the bench in Chicago, watching the game like a fan with better seats, but no drink menu and a personal waiter? He isn't worth a thing to anyone. But the Warriors needed to salvage a season that was starting to spiral, so they slapped a salvage title on Kuminga. Kerr will play him again. He has to. But don't expect an epiphany. We've seen the carrot, we've seen the stick, and we've heard the quotes. But actions speak louder than words. What have we seen from Kuminga that makes anyone believe he's ready to be a professional on the court, to be the Shawn Marion the Warriors want and need him to be? Until Kuminga realizes that helping the Warriors is the only way to help himself until he can be moved on January 15th, we're all just watching a game of chicken where both cars have already driven off the cliff. I'm not holding my breath that long. NBA Insider points out Steve Kerr's main problem with Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga's time with the Golden State Warriors will likely end this season. The young star looked like he had finally cracked the starting 5 to start the year, but that seems like a false alarm now. Kuminga has been relegated to a bench role, and an NBA insider has pointed out Steve Kerr's issue with him. Kerr has coached the Warriors to 4 championships. However, he can be stubborn from time to time as the head coach. The Kuminga situation has been less than ideal for the franchise, and he hasn't been able to do much about it. Steve Kerr doesn't seem to trust minutes to Kuminga even at this point in his career, Zach Harper of The Athletic said on a podcast with fellow insider Mark Stein. Stein then explained that the Warriors are hoping to find a trade for Kuminga, although his value hasn't increased. The lack of trust is the biggest problem. Kerr recently didn't play Kuminga at all in a game against the Bulls. Benching is one thing, but a DNP is outright damning. If the coach can't help the young star maximize even in moments, the Warriors won't get much return in a trade.